Asian people in the US are so weird. I feel like most POCs, especially like Black and Hispanic people, tend to like and support their own people more versus Asian people be liking white people more than their own people. And nothing is wrong with that, but I'm just saying it's interesting that many Asian people in the US tend to be that way. And I also feel like within Asian communities, there's always this internal competition of which Asian race is superior. But I wish there are more Asian people that are proud of being Asian and support each other's and love themselves, like regardless of which Asian race they are. Because why not?
Ajma here. As an older Gen X Korean American, I can tell you exactly why, um, these Korean Americans who are being problematic are the way they are. And that would be because, and I am spilling the cha for all of everyone else to be aware of. Southern California Korean Americans are the Regina Georges of all other Korean Americans. Like, if you are a Korean American from Chicago or New York or Maryland or Texas or even Florida Koreans, we've all been bullied by a Southern California Korean American.
This is exactly why other Asians outside of California have such a problem and disdain for SoCal Asians. Because SoCal Asians, when they meet other Asians from like different states that are not from California, and this is just from personal experience, it's like we have to prove to these SoCal Asians that we're Asian. I'm from the Midwest. I grew up in Nebraska and Iowa. So when I tell other Asian people that, especially SoCal Asians, the look on their faces and the dumb questions that come out of their mouth, the look on their faces and the many conversations that I've had with SoCal Asians, it's just like they do have a superiority complex. And unfortunately, that's exactly why other Asian people talk shit about SoCal Asians.
All right, some of you guys are not gonna like hearing this, but I think it needs to be said. The Asian women that only date white men and they tell themselves that it's all just personal preference, I think they know that they're lying to themselves and they just won't admit it. And the reason why I know that is because I used to do the exact same thing. I grew up in a very small town and it wasn't cool to be Asian back then. I probably only knew like 6 other Asian kids growing up, including my own brother. And naturally, as a kid, you want to fit in. You don't want to get bullied or made fun of at school. And so I just developed this habit of distancing myself from anything Asian related. So like the language, food, anything Asian. Like if someone at school asked me to say something in Chinese to them, I would just pretend like I didn't speak the language.
I can't explain it, but Asians who don't like other Asians, they have this like dead-eyed look, like there's a glaze over their eyes always. It's like their connection to self was like beaten out of them in a way to kind of like survive. And instead of like judging them, I don't hate them, but I just have this deep sense of pity. Because I grew up being like that. Like, if I hated myself before everyone else hated me, then I would never be caught by surprise.
Inside the community, there is an unspoken blueprint for what an Asian American should be. And the greatest sin isn't failing to meet the white world's expectations. It's failing to meet each other's, because when one piece steps out of line, we fear the whole pattern might fall apart for everyone else.
I went to a super white high school in New York where Asians were very much a minority. And in this context, all the Asians hanging out with other Asians is very clearly protective. But then I moved to Los Angeles, which is very, very Asian. And now my opinion has changed because in this context with so many Asians, now all of the Asians hanging out with other Asians, it doesn't feel protective anymore. It doesn't feel like survival. Now it just feels like straight up exclusivity and elitism. And it is so ironic because I'll hear so many Asian Americans complain about the way that white Americans treat us, but then we go and act just like white Americans by, excluding other minorities, talking down on other minorities, literally only hanging out with people who look like us. My hope for Asian America is that We get radicalized. We learn that racism is more than just this like interpersonal thing. We learn that racism isn't just, oh, there's no one who looks like me on media. We actually learn about state violence, structural violence, and we learn to align ourselves with other people of color. But instead, so many of us are out here seeking approval from white people, or wanting to be just like them, wanting to be just as wealthy as them, wanting to be just as exclusive and just as elitist as them. And it is so, so ugly.
All right, some of you guys are not going to like hearing this, but I think it needs to be said. The Asian women that only date white men and they tell themselves that it's all just personal preference, I think they know that they're lying to themselves and they just won't admit it. And the reason why I know that is because I used to do the exact same thing. I grew up in a very small town and it wasn't cool to be Asian back then. I probably only knew like 6 other Asian kids growing up, including my own brother. And naturally as a kid, you want to fit in. You don't want to get bullied or made fun of at school. And so I just developed this habit of distancing myself from anything Asian related. So like the language, food, anything Asian. Like if someone at school asked me to say something in Chinese to them, I would just pretend like I didn't speak the language when in reality, my parents would force me to speak Chinese to them at home. And along with that was Asian men. They just happened to fall in this Asian bubble that I was trying to distance myself from. Even though I think like the food, the music and culture, they're great, they're amazing, they're beautiful. But I just didn't want to give them a chance because it was more important for me to fit in. And I think that's the reason why we hear some Asian women say they're not attracted to Asian men. I don't think it's personal preference because how can you be unattracted to someone just because they share some similar physical traits that you and your ancestors share? I think it just means that there are parts of you that you're insecure about and you're just projecting it onto the Asian male version of yourself.
To understand this policing, you must first understand the fortress we were told to build. The model minority myth wasn't just a label slapped on us. For many families, it became a survival manual. In a country with a brutal black-white racial binary, the directive was clear. Be exceptional, be quiet, be non-threatening, and assimilate economically while remaining culturally invisible. This created a psychology of conditional safety. I remember the unspoken rules. Don't bring attention. Let our grades and our bank accounts speak for us. We are not like them. But this safety was precarious. It depended on the group's collective ability to maintain the facade. So, when an individual Asian American steps outside the script by being too loud, too political, too ethnic, or worse, by failing academically or financially, they aren't just making a personal choice. In the eyes of some within the community, they are endangering the carefully negotiated, fragile contract of acceptance for everyone. The hate isn't personal, it's panicked. It's the fear that one cracked window will let the storm into the whole house.
This is exactly why other Asians outside of California have such a problem and disdain for SoCal Asians. Because SoCal Asians, when they meet other Asians from like different states that are not from California, and this is just from personal experience, it's like we have to prove to these SoCal Asians that we're Asian. I'm from the Midwest. I grew up in Nebraska and Iowa. So when I tell other Asian people that, especially SoCal Asians, the look on their faces and the dumb questions that come out of their mouth, the look on their faces and the many conversations that I've had with SoCal Asians, it's just like they do have a superiority complex. And unfortunately, that's exactly why other Asian people talk shit about SoCal Asians, because y'all put yourselves in this position with these nasty attitudes towards other Asians. And this video is like a great example of their attitude towards other Asian people. And I don't really know what he was trying to do saying that, because to me, that was an asshole comment. At your big age and at my big age, we're in a time where we can finally be proud of our culture and we can finally talk about our culture and our upbringing and being Asian in a way that doesn't make us feel less than. Okay, if that you like, I think you know where I'm going. And having this attitude is the reason why a lot of SoCal Asians are not well liked with other Asians. And I get it. Y'all grew up with access to Asian things that a lot of other Asians are unable to experience or were unable to experience. But that doesn't mean you can throw it in our faces.
Low-key, I really hate it whenever people talk about like issues against Asian American people and then they're like, well, people in mainland Asia don't go through this, you know? Yeah, they don't go through discrimination. They're not a minority. They're from Asia. Like, hello, like people in Asia are not a minority for being Asian, okay? And you can't mention it every single time there's an issue of discrimination because that doesn't make sense because they're not affected by it. Like, why is it so shocked that Asian American people are affected by issues in America, issues from being a minority? Like, that's the whole point. And I think sometimes people mention it as a way of like invalidating the claim, like, guys, it's not that problematic. People from actual Asia don't care. Yeah, people from actual Asia are racist. Like, they kind of suck ass sometimes. Like, let's not act like they're goody two-shoes, okay?
This is where the survival tactic curdles into a social currency, the proximity play. To prove one's own successful assimilation, some Asian Americans engage in a brutal form of distancing. They other Asians, mocking the newly arrived immigrant's accent, ridiculing FOBs, fashion, or dismissing traditional practices as backward becomes a public ritual. It's a transaction that says, see, I'm not like them. I am culturally closer to you. I've witnessed this in schoolyards and boardrooms. The cringe when a parent speaks in their native tongue in public, the eye roll at a relative's un-American manners. This performance is a ticket, they believe, out of the racial ghetto and into the mainstream. It's a misguided belief that you can gain individual safety by throwing others from your community under the bus. The hatred for other Asians who are too Asian is, at its core, a hatred for the parts of themselves they have been taught to suppress in order to survive. They are not policing others. They are violently enforcing the rules they have internalized on their own psyche, projecting their self-contempt outward.
Ajma here. As an older Gen X Korean American, I can tell you exactly why, these Korean Americans who are being problematic are the way they are. And that would be because, and I am spilling the cha for all of everyone else to be aware of. Southern California Korean Americans are the Regina Georges of all other Korean Americans. Like, if you are a Korean American from Chicago or New York or Maryland or Texas or even Florida Koreans, we've all been bullied by a Southern California Korean American. Like, if you have a story about being bullied by a Southern California Korean American about your identity of somehow not being Korean enough, like, raise your hand and, like, it's basically the rest of us. Unless you're from Flushing. Because the Flushing Korean Americans are a whole other vibe. Swear to God. And I know it, lots of respect, but they have their own things. They are not the problems in this whole TikTok mess, I tell you that. Like, Southern California had so many Korean resources that some of the members of my home church who couldn't fly to Korea would fly to LA for the stuff that they wanted to get. And while Ajma is now a Northern California Korean American, I did not start that way. I was a Midwest Korean American, and not even from Chicago. And I can't even claim Ann Arbor, even though I went to university there. Go blue. You know, like, I didn't grow up with the big Korean church in Ann Arbor. Like, that wasn't even me. So, like, when I interact with Southern California Korean Americans in the 80s and 90s, they were fucking mean. So this, being them, does not surprise me. Like, I've met Southern California Korean Americans who were born and raised in California who, confusingly enough, still had very thick Korean accents. So yeah, the fact that the problematic Korean Americans of a particular generation on this app all hail from Southern California, that clocks. That makes sense to me. That honestly does not surprise me at all.
I can't explain it, but Asians who don't like other Asians, they have this like dead-eyed look, like there's a glaze over their eyes always. It's like their connection to self was like beaten out of them in a way to kind of like survive. And instead of like judging them, I don't hate them, but I just have this deep sense of pity because I grew up being like that. Like if I hated myself before everyone else hated me, then I would never be caught by surprise. But then it seeps into like every crevice. Like it really is like that get outification of self and existence. Like it's never too late to both like yourself and connect to people who have shared experience and who reflect physically even back to you in a way. Like it's just never too late to wake up to your fullest self, I feel.
But the manual is falling apart. A new generation, raised with the privileges their parents fought for, is refusing the old script. They are loud, politically awake, proudly ethnic, and rejecting the STEM or bust mandate. To the older or more conservative guard, who built their lives on the old blueprint, this is not progress. It's sabotage. It feels like a reckless burning of the very bridge that brought them across. The hate here is generational and fearful. We suffered silently so you could have this, and you're squandering it by being too visible. This creates a painful civil war within the community. The activist calling out anti-Asian racism is seen as a troublemaker by the uncle who says, "Just keep your head down." The influencer celebrating Lunar New Day with flamboyance is dismissed by the aunt who perfected the art of cultural camouflage. The new generation isn't trying to be white. They're trying to be fully, unapologetically themselves. And to those who sold a piece of their soul to buy a seat at the table, that fullness feels like a threat to the stability of the entire, carefully negotiated arrangement.
I'm gonna say something that y'all aren't gonna like, but there is an expectation that Asian people will pander to white people. It's rooted in xenophobia and the model minority myth. And I'll even take it a step further. The Asian people who are making videos like, oh my gosh, this discourse is so stupid, like, do we not have anything better to talk about, blah, blah, blah. Y'all are also pandering to white people and you don't even realize it. Because let's be so honest here, if the original creator was not a Asian woman talking about an Asian grocery store, but a black person talking about a black beauty supply store or a black-owned business, it would have not gotten the same amount of outrage it did. Now, before I get the comments, oh, why do you have to bring black people into this, whatever, I want to have like an actual nuanced discussion on critical race theory, like when it comes to this topic. And it's also because a lot of the white people that were so outraged by this discourse wouldn't have said shit if this was about a black creator, and I'm going to tell you why. If we look back at history, a lot of black American culture was born essentially because white people stripped black people of their ethnic culture, heritage, and roots. As a lot of us know, a lot of black Americans don't even know where their African ancestors are exactly from because their history was erased and destroyed through slavery. And a lot of black American culture was created in spite of white people and their perpetuation of racism. So a lot of black Americans created products that were made for them based on their features, and they also cultivated their own culture within the context of the United States and kept it alive despite systemic racism that they constantly faced. So if black people see a white person come into their space that was created in spite of them, obviously there are going to be side eyes, but the reason why there are side eyes is much more obvious. So if a black creator created a similar video to what Madeline did, the white person saying, oh my gosh, this is racist, this is prejudice, would look much more blatantly racist. And the discrepancy lies in that Asian people came to this country voluntarily. So white people subconsciously hold this like entitled energy against Asian people. It's sort of this sentiment of like, wow, we let you come into our country and now you're gonna gatekeep things from us? Classic model minority myth. I'm gonna give a second to the white people who come across this video and was just rage baited by what I said. They're probably thinking like, oh my god, I wasn't thinking that, you can't speak for white people, bah. But let's be honest, if this discourse wasn't Asian grocery store, but it was black beauty supply store, would you have felt the same? Think about it. If you think they're the same, you're just racist, like good old American classic. But if you would have reacted differently, you're subconsciously xenophobic. And just to talk more about the other differences, like Asian culture was not created in spite of white people, it was created literally somewhere else. So there's not as strong emotions to try and protect and gatekeep it. Asians and Asian Americans alike, like, we love sharing our culture for the most part. That also explains why some Asian Americans felt the need to pander to their white audiences, because there's a subconscious thought that gatekeeping our culture will hurt us in some socioeconomic sense. But when you look at the widespread of Asian culture in the United States, a lot of us have also seen our culture become gentrified, fetishized, appropriated with no respect to the actual culture. Like, let's be so honest here, like, it wasn't until a couple years ago until white people stopped labeling our food as like disgusting or smelly or exotic. So when it comes to the context of the United States, a lot of Asian Americans have this like conflicted emotion of wanting to share our culture but not wanting it to be disrespected. And you literally see this conflict of emotions happen within Madeline's original video. She literally says in the video, like, I'ma still side-eye because I'm a bitch, but please come and still support these businesses. Now, to the white people who thought they did their big one by commenting shit like, oh, I better not see Asians at Trader Joe's after this, or some shit like that. You know, like Trader Joe's, Walmart, like all these like grocery stores, they're not white grocery stores. They're not white establishments. They're American establishments. But the fact that you're conflating white to America, that's racist too. White was never a culture, it will never be a culture, and the fact that so many of you tie your whiteness to your culture is concerning, and that's something you need to think about. Also, to the Asian people who felt the need to make a video about how stupid this discourse is and like we should be having so many better conversations, do that. Start the conversation. Why are you engaging in a discourse that you think is stupid? Like, yeah, I thought this conversation was pretty ridiculous at first too. And then I saw so many other creators making such insightful and nuanced discussions about it, and I continued to listen to them. But if you thought the conversations weren't worth your time and you thought they were stupid and you don't know why people are making videos about it, why did you make a video about it? The thing that y'all don't understand is like going publicly to say that you're shutting down a discourse or dismissing a discourse is engaging in the discourse. For those 5 to 10 minutes you spent on making a video about how stupid you think the H-Mart discourse is, you could have been talking about something that you thought was important and relevant. But you didn't. So what does that say about you?
If you are Asian, particularly Asian male, this is something that you guys need to stop doing. So occasionally I'll come across content where there's an Asian guy that's partnered with an attractive white woman, and I'll go to the comments and I'll see comments typically from other Asian men saying things like, oh my God, great job, bro. I just stood up and applauded for a bro, like stuff like that. And usually the Asian guy is pretty attractive himself. So what exactly are they applauding here? It's not the fact that an unattractive guy was able to bag a hottie. No, so they're applauding the fact that this Asian guy was able to bag a white woman. And this is really toxic and destructive. When they say that, when you make those comments, you're implying that white women and white people are superior and somehow inherently more valuable than women of other races. I don't really see these types of comments happening when attractive Asian guys are dating women of other races. Yeah, that's really colonialism at work in your hearts. That's really a colonial mentality. So I just wanted you guys to be aware of that. Like, please stop. Don't make those kinds of comments.
A community that polices its own diversity is a community building its own prison. Our strength was never in our uniformity, but in our complexity. So, here's the challenge. Break the mirror you're using to police others. The next time you feel that cringe, that judgment, that urge to distance yourself from another Asian person for being too much, pause. Ask yourself, who am I performing for? What fear is driving this? Our collective power does not lie in being the good minority. It lies in being an unignorable community, rich with every kind of person, the quiet engineer and the loud activist, the traditional elder and the genre-breaking artist. Stop wasting energy enforcing a blueprint written by someone else to keep you in your place. Redirect that energy into building a table big enough and a story bold enough to include every single one of us.